I wanted to switch reels for a minute, and I believe that Dr. Baer had mentioned earlier about U.S.-issued guidelines regarding the mineral trade, and I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about that. I'm specifically interested in who's involved in the mineral trade. Are there a lot of U.S. companies involved? Are there European companies? Who's engaging in the mineral trade?
Historically, the mineral trade has included every range of actors that you described, from the small shop or the one-person show that sells to a middleman, that sells to a middleman, that sells to a middleman, to large multinationals. I don't know which U.S. firms are operating there now, if any. I know that many firms have, because of the violence, either made initial planning missions but have not chosen to develop mining operations, et cetera, or have paused or withdrawn. I believe Rio Tinto is still operating, but I think Freeport-McMoran has ceased recently. I may be getting them inverted, but so there are a range of firms operating. I think
are those firms here? I'm not familiar with those names.
Freeport-McMoran is Rio Tinto is Australian. Freeport-McMoran is it may be a U.S. firm. I'm not sure. In any case, they operate with Congolese partners in most cases as a joint venture. The challenge, though, for whoever the operator is, whether it's a domestic Congolese operator or an international firm, the challenge is making sure that the supply chains are secure, being able to know the provenance of the minerals, because what happens is the revenues get siphoned off at various side points or get smuggled in.
Corruption.
Through the minerals get smuggled into a clean supply chain, allowing rebel groups to fund their activities. And so the reason why the international community is focused on that is to try to starve the rebel groups of this source of funding. And of course, the rebel groups have been primary perpetrators of the sexual and gender-based violence. I think it's a good thing that the OECD has developed guidelines on due diligence for supply chains, and we expect that as companies learn how to better implement those guidelines, that will help solve parts of the problem. But to be completely straight with you, it's a monumental practical challenge, given all of the challenges that we've already described: the vast distance, the lack of police, et cetera. It is a huge challenge, and it'll be one going forward. But it's one that responsible companies are going to figure out a way to solve. They figure out a way to solve problems with supply chains of all sorts all over the world, and they will figure out how to solve it. And we continue to look to them to make progress on that.
And just to add to Dan's comments is, we still await the Security and Exchange Commission issuance of the new regulations under Section 1502, because this will increase the confidence of U.S. firms of what the regulations and the guidelines are in operating in the Congo, so that they can make the adjustments. Right now, not knowing what the regulations are, it creates a lot of insecurity and questions about how they can manage the conflict minerals. And also it has repercussions on the people of the Congo in that area as far as unemployment and other issues. But I think after the regulations are issued, that will help. In the meantime, the ICGLR, which is the regional groups, are making plans, are moving forward. We continue to talk to the American businesses about the trade in the Congo, because we need to be there.
And can I get that information somewhere, like who is involved? Because I'm just wondering when we're talking about civil society and all that, I'm just wondering if there is a way that they can be engaged, some of the major, companies, whether they're U.S. or otherwise.
Sure, we can provide you that information, and we'll come and brief you privately.
Oh, I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
One of the initiatives that we have engaged with U.S. firms on, as well as other multinational firms, is called the Voluntary Principles on Security and Human Rights, which has to do specifically with the private security contractors and public security forces that multinational firms use to protect their assets, and making sure that they are trained and ensuring their respect for human rights. And so that's something that we've discussed both with the Congolese government and with multinational firms. When I was in Kinshasa last June, I had a small meeting with a number of firms that are represented there. So we are working with firms on that. And to your question about civil society, there is against all odds, an extremely vibrant civil society in Eastern Congo that works on issues like this every day, and many of the firms that are operating there are in contact with them, and that partnership is certainly going to be part of the long-term solution.
Okay, great. I love those firms too, these security firms.
May I add that USAID has a very interesting responsible minerals trade program that began in FY10, and it's got 3 basic components. It's about infrastructure and regulatory reform, the protection of communities and child-free certification, and technical assistance to develop a pilot program for this conflict-free minerals supply chain to get sector users involved. And we have an extractive industries advisor currently out in the East with a group of users to explore how to work together. We can get you additional details if you want.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.